Hello, sir.
Good evening.
Yeah.
I think, shall we start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, hi, good evening. Today we have with us Simi Karan, one of the most talented IAS selected candidate this year. I had to change a description now. So, she graduated from IT Bombay in 2019, opted for PSIR as the optional instead of any engineering optional or any other optional. So I'll give you a brief introduction of her, maybe in 30 seconds or so. So her father is working with the Steel Authority of India, Bhilai plant, and her mother is a teacher. Then she got a lot of awards and scholarships and all. Jindal Vindal wala patani Sara sponsors and all. Very very talented kid. But today's session we will focus upon why she opted PSIR as the optional, because according to me PSIR is one of the biggest optional, more than the geography. According to me, the second biggest optional is geography, in which you require at least 3 months, maybe three and a half months. So she opted for PSIR as the optional, and then she passed out in, I think, May or June 2019, and in just 3 months she prepared both the optional also as well as the GS also. So today's session she will take about the PSIR as the optional. So Simi, first question to you is why you opted for PSIR as the optional, despite being an engineering. You could have opted for some engineering or some science related optional. You are not audible.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, now you're audible. Yeah, please.
So, before that, I would just like to highlight the fact that because the optional has 500 marks, I think it carries a lot of importance in terms of you have to spend a lot of time with the optional. You have to give a lot of time, and you maybe have to study 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 years, based on how many attempts you take. So, I think that should be always kept in mind, that an in-depth understanding and internalizing of the concepts is very much required in this optional, in the optional. So coming to why I chose PSIR as an optional, first thing that I would highlight what not to consider while choosing an optional is that you should not go back and see the top 10 list and see what the marks the toppers have got and what their optional is. That should absolutely not be the criteria, because if you see overall, there's a well distribution of all the subjects. What my prime focus was on the interest. So I saw the syllabus, I saw the previous year questions, I also saw the toppers answer copies in terms of what is expected from me in an answer, and I realized that PSIR is a subject that I'm comfortable in and I can enjoy studying for long hours. Another thing why a lot of people ask me is why I shifted away from electrical engineering. So this is a purely personal choice, and some of the prime reasons why I did not choose electrical engineering was, firstly, electrical engineering has a very big syllabus. And if we see the syllabus, what we cover in IIT Bombay, we focus more on electronics and not the electrical engineering part. So anyhow, a lot of section will have to be done myself. There was very little overlap. There was no overlap with the general studies papers, and I think that helped proved very helpful for me in the GS preparation, because PSIR as an optional has an almost 80% overlap with GS2. If we consider GS1, the society section, especially this year, the questions on secularism, I could answer them very well because my concepts were clear. Even for GS4 or essay, the quotes can be easily used by thinkers. So, and another point was that I was not into Indian engineering services. So I thought that I can take up an arts optional. Now, coming to other benefits that PSIR has as an optional is, firstly, I think it might be a challenge for some, but I enjoyed the dynamic nature of the subject because it has a lot of coverage and it helped me prepare my current affairs as well. And I enjoyed reading something new every day and improving my understanding every day. Also, a lot of concise material for this optional is available in the market, and that was also something I considered, although it was not my prime consideration. One more thing that should be kept in mind is...
Wait, I'm interrupting you in between. How much time did you took to decide that I want to take PSIR as the optional?
Sir, I gave a very good amount of time in terms of deciding. I remember the entire seventh semester I had taken up to decide which optional I had to choose. I had even, so I had a confusion between chemistry versus PSIR as an optional. So for that, I
Interesting.
actually found a senior who had changed his optional from chemistry to PSIR in his second attempt. And I randomly just pinged him on Facebook, not expecting an answer, but he did reply. He patiently answered all my questions related to the two optionals, and that proved very helpful in finally deciding which optional to choose.
Why you were not expecting that he or she will reply?
So because I was pinging him on Facebook and I am not a friend of him, so that
Okay.
usually can get neglected, those kind of messages.
Okay. So you took almost 2 or 3 months of research to finally decide that you want to take PSIR as the optional.
Yes, sir.
If I want to, may I ask you, what was the procedure which you have adopted while deciding between chemistry and this thing, PSIR?
So if I give some points, it may sound a little biased towards PSIR, but even then, if you ask this question specifically, so even in so I was a bit concerned in terms of how much remembering I had to do in terms of scholars' names, analysts' names, etc. But when I talked to him, he said that even in chemistry, there are lots of, for example, the inorganic topics which you have to anyhow remember. So in terms of remembering, there may not be that much of a difference. Secondly, chemistry in itself will take a lot of time for preparation as compared to PSIR. And thirdly, the overlap, even he said that he found that useful. The PSIR overlap with the general studies paper. So I think in that sort of decided it for me.
Okay, so let's start from the exact strategy which you have followed, step by step description of what exactly we should study in PSIR, which all handouts we need to focus, the book list, etc. and all.
Okay, sir. So one more thing that I would like to highlight for anyone trying to opt for PSIR is that you should have a good flair for writing long answers, because you will have to write almost 3 to 4 pages of answers for a question. So you should be able to, put those things in proper words with a proper flow. So that should also be considered. I had prepared this optional in a very short amount of time, and as sir said that I started it after prelims, but this probably worked for me. It may not necessarily work for others. So I would like to recommend anyone who has like an year or so for preparation to start early on with their optional, to decide it early and to finish it off as much as possible beforehand itself, because now we can see that the time gap between prelims and mains is going down. We had almost like 3.5 months. Now this year it will be 3 months, and the next it will be only 2.5 months. So we'll have very less time to build that in-depth knowledge of the subject. So you should finish it off as early as possible. So coming to what sources I chose, I had kept it very limited because,
If
as you know,
you also want to explain this with the PPT or the normal one?
so I'll be using PPT later on.
Okay, so sure.
So coming to the sources, I have added some of the sources which are used after the mains as well. So I'm not segregating the two, that book, and not start reading randomly. Paper 2, again, I had read Pax Indica by Shashi Tharoor a long time ago. But you can also read Rajiv Sikri or David Maloon's book to get a good understanding of the background of the relations. For current affairs, I refer to The Hindu and the Indian Express editorials. Again, read it very selectively by mapping it correctly with which part of my syllabus that particular topic fits in. Another source that I was reading daily was the ORF website. It provides very good analysis of the international relations. Another thing, again, this was because I had very little time and I had to prepare on the go. So I had to prepare because I was moving from my hometown to Delhi. So I had to prepare. I wanted something which was always present with me on my mobile phone. So on my Facebook feed, I had kept the Diplomat, Rajya Sabha TV, India's World, and the Center for Policy Research websites on the top of my feed, So if I found in a particular topic, if a particular article seemed relevant, I could read it then and there and put the points in my notes. Again, I also refer to some book reviews, and especially the external affairs minister, foreign secretary, and prime minister's speeches. Either you can find those summaries online, or you can directly see their videos. I enjoyed seeing the videos in my during when I was eating, so it was a good break for me. So these were all of my sources. I again I read them very selectively, keeping Shubhra Ranjan ma'am's notes as the base. So moving ahead to the note making. So I believe that you should do the hard work earlier. So later on your revision becomes easier. And for this optional, because it is so big, you need to cut down on the amount of time you need for revision for each and every step. So I made both kind of notes. I made it in e mode as well as on loose A4 sheets. I use the Evernote for my e notes. And moving ahead, I will show you why I prefer e-notes over the loose sheets. But if someone is comfortable writing it down, then you can even use the A4 size papers. So again, it's a personal choice, but I would explain to you moving ahead why I prefer the loose notes, why I prefer the e-notes. So another benefit that e-notes gives you is that it is uh, current the in PSIR is a very dynamic subject. So you always have new material coming up. You are reading the toppers copies. You find new points that you always want to add, and that can be done very easily if you are making the notes in the e mode. And then it is easier to compile, and when you have multiple sources, it's easier to consolidate at one point. Another thing that I was continuously doing with my notes was I was restructuring them. I was always restructuring them according to the need of the exam. So I will always have an introduction and a conclusion for any topic that I was reading pre-prepared. So there may not be a lot of topics in the actual exam for which you will get pre-planned intros, but even if it is possible in one or two questions, that proves very helpful, because you otherwise waste a lot of time in terms of starting the answer. So that is also easily done in the e-notes. Another thing that I was incorporating in my notes was keywords. So I personally believe that the arts optionals require a very scholarly language when you are putting the answers. It should reflect that you have internalized and you have the in-depth knowledge. And for this, the proper words that are used in the optional are important. So for each subject, each topic that I was reading, I maintained a list of keywords so that I could go for a quick revision right before the exams. And that was all I focused in probably the last 2 or 3 days before the exam. And yeah, another thing which is very important for this optional is the previous year questions. The questions are repeated continuously, almost 10 questions probably are repeated. And so if you've already prepared them beforehand, it reduces your burden during the exam time. So now I'll show you my slides, which show my sample notes that I had prepared.
I think I have to make you host just 1 second.
Yes.
Yes, I think now you can share.
So is it visible?
Yes, now.
So I had made like the loose A4 sheet notes for the paper one part A. That is what I started with. So for paper one part A, if you can see, for example, the feminism notes, I was just writing down most important keywords, and even during revision, I was underlining the most important words, so that with every revision, my time for revision comes down. So even if for the first time I am taking like an hour to revise, by the end of it, I'll probably take like 15 or 10 minutes to revise that. So these are my feminism notes. We will share the slides with you so you can have a better look. Now, what challenge I had with the notes was, like, for example, the Hannah Arendt topic. Here you can see whatever I've written in red is the points that I found later. Now it becomes very difficult to incorporate in a proper flow in the answer. when you are having this kind of notes. But if you make it in the e-notes format, it can be easily integrated. And that is why I then shifted to like e-notes of this type for even paper one, so that my revision becomes very easy. So the entire socialism I had reduced to this many lines. These are the most important keywords that I'll be using in the exam. Now moving on to paper one part B. Here, for example, for the commission recommendations, these are some of the extra efforts that I put in. So I made a summary of all the recommendations of like the Sarkaria Commission, the Punchi Commission, the NCRWC commissions. Now what I did not simply stop there. Now I integrated these notes with the relevant sections in the Indian government and politics. So you can see the point number 9 is related to governor. So when I'm making the notes of governor, I'll integrate this point at that in that section. So that will make my revision easier. So this is another topic like caste, religion, ethnicity in politics. Here nowadays they have a question on development in politics. So these are the headings that I used. I always went in with an introduction pre-planned, and then these were the relevant topics that I felt were important from this subject. For paper 2, so these are the kind of keywords that I was talking about. So if you can see, like in China, these are the words that you can use in China's question. So weaponized interdependence, Beijing system, Sino-centric world order. These are keywords I actually used in the exam, and that was primarily because I could revise it over and over again. Now this also helps you build a scholarly tone, like I told earlier. So this is another summary of the Raisina dialogue, External Affairs Minister's speech at Raisina dialogue. Again, if you read the points by itself, they will not make any sense because the question may not directly be asked. But as you can see, like in point number 3, I had written it in the side that I can use it in UNSC or climate change. So your hard work comes in that not just reading the statements, you need to put them in the proper sections so that later on that exercise becomes much more easier if you have to do it directly in the exam. This is like when you are writing relations with a particular country. So starting with so for example, in the country Nepal, I had 2 or 3 introductions based on the nature of the question. So if it's a positive kind of question, I will start with roti beti ka rishta. But if it's a negative kind of relation, especially given in the present scenario, I can start that India and Nepal are lodged in each other's intestines. So that makes for a more relevant introduction. Then again, I had a set of conclusions prepared for from different scholars. I selectively remembered the scholar. So for Nepal, Shyam Saran is an important scholar. So he is a name I will remember. But from other scholars, I will remember the keywords like Nepal first approach or India talks, China delivers. Those kind of keywords become very important. So this is another topic which is present in our syllabus. Now, this is another thing that I invested time in, that is was trying to pre-plan an answer structure in itself. So, for example, there are some very static topics which are always going to come in the exam. So, there will always be some question from the determinants of the foreign policy or from comparative politics. So, those sections I had some answer structure pre-planned so that I have a sort of framework in mind when I'm writing the answer, and I don't have to think that in the exam. So this is like a rough structure that I had prepared for paper 1 part A. So you can go with the context, then the content, basic contents using the phrases and the quotes. Then if there is any application of the concept, then if there are any contradictionary or comparative scholars that we can use in comparison to that particular scholar, then is there a contemporary example. So for example, for philosopher king, we can give the example of Ayatollah Khamenei of Iran. So those kind of examples, and then finally ending with a critique. So this kind of reduces my hard work during the exam. So that was all from my notes perspective. Now some people have asked me, how do we understand which current affairs topics become important? I think here the previous year questions become very relevant because they will tell you that in this particular year, so if you've read the previous year questions, the meet between Trump and Kim Jong-un was covered very well by the media in that particular year, and a question was asked on that. So questions, the incidents which are very highly relevant in the current affairs in the international relations might be asked. The relations of India with other countries, any sort of bilateral meet, multilateral meet definitely becomes important. Apart from that, these kind of international relations, so for example, US Iran, US with North Korea, China with what is happening in the South China Sea, those are important. And also how India is associated with that issue is very important. So you should search for articles which relate India with that particular issue. Again, other kind of questions that this time were asked, which were quite surprising, was the NAM summit in Venezuela, because India was not taking NAM very seriously for the given years, and India had also not gone for the Prime Minister Modi had not gone for the visit. So that makes it very clear that any kind of grouping that India is a part of, if they have any summit going on, or they have had a summit in the past year, becomes very relevant, and you should pick up the 4 or 5 major important unique points from that summit's meeting. So for paper 1 part B also, the elections become very important, and elections not just in terms of outcomes but analysis. So if you've heard of if you've heard of analysts like Yogendra Yadav, Milan Vaishnav, Christopher Jaffrelot, they write a lot of articles on analysis of elections. Those kind of articles are very important. Again, any point that you might consider important, any current affairs you might consider important from GS2 perspective will also be relevant here. The only difference will be in the nature of answers that you write. Now, a lot of people are requesting me to share notes. I have given you the sample notes, and I will also be sharing some of the answers that I have written earlier. But I think I'll not be sharing the notes because, firstly, I think this is a process which every person has to go through. While you make your own notes, you are also sort of revising and refining yourself in the subject. So for optional especially, you should put that extra effort by yourself. And again, I have used a lot of abbreviations, absolutely no spell checking in my notes, and so it will probably useless for you. So with the sample notes that I've given, you can probably develop your own way of writing. Again, with revision, I would suggest this. I've suggested with GS also, that with every revision you should try and reduce the time required, so that you can cover a lot of things in a short time, which ultimately you'll have to do before the mains. So this is something you should try and do again and again. So next we'll be discussing about answer writing. I think PSIR is an optional where answer writing becomes very important, because a lot of people, a lot of us have almost a similar content, as except for the current affairs. So what makes our answers more unique or better than the other people will be our answer writing style. So the question which is asked often is, when should we start answer writing? I think you should start it as early as possible. So when you read one particular thinker, let's say Plato or Aristotle, then you can pick up the previous year questions from that particular thinker, and you can start writing at least a basic sort of answer with your given knowledge. You may not develop the interlinking all at once. That might probably come after you've read all of the syllabus, but starting this exercise of writing answers breaks that lethargicness that we have towards writing answers. We always try and keep pending it for tomorrow, and that tomorrow never comes. So I think that should be started as early as possible. Now, just again, I want to highlight this point that previous year questions are very important, because if you see this year's question paper, so there was a question on the communitarian perspective on justice. There was a question on Cautilier's views on the elements of state, and all of these questions have been asked earlier. So these becomes very important, and there are some compulsory topics from which the questions will anyhow come all the time. So that should be practiced beforehand. Um, a source that I was using to understand whether I am going in the right direction in terms of answer writing is the previous year toppers answer copies. So they provide a very good source for content and the structure. So some of the toppers whose copies I have referred are Trupti Dhodnise ma'am, Dinesh Kumar sir, and Amritpal Kaur ma'ams. So you can, these are available online on the GS Score or some other sources. You can simply download them and analyze them, understand, focus more on the way they're writing the answers, the words they're using, and the structure of writing answers. Now, when you're trying to address an answer, I think for PSIR or any optional in particular, rather than jumping right into the answer, trying to build a context becomes very important. So you have to build a whole framework in which you will write the answer. So to just to give an example, if there's a question on the US-China trade war, now this might seem like an economic issue, but we have to highlight the political framework behind it. So I can bring in scholars like Mersheimer or the concept of Thucydides trap to bring in the present state of relations. Or I can even use terms like the present world is in a state of flux or a state of transition. So these kind of words highlight our background and the scholarly knowledge that goes in it. Next question.
You have listed these keywords for each and every country.
Each and every country, each and every thinker, each and every topic, even in paper 1 part B. So there are some keywords that you will find for every section.
And those notes you don't want to share. Okay.
Those notes because they are not in a very legible format. Okay, so next, moving on, the question that is often asked is how do we differentiate our GS2 answers from PSIR answers? And
yeah, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting in between. I think there was a question this year in PSIR paper 2 that why India needs West Asia and why West Asia needs India. If you can explain with this that how we should write this answer in GS2 and how it should be written in optional paper 2, because I covered this particular question for current affairs. I know. Yeah.
Right, sir. So if a question on West Asia will come and we have to explain the relations, first of all, in terms of writing, you can use bullets, you can use flowcharts, you can use diagrams in the GS2. I tried to avoid using bullets and diagrams as much as possible in my PSIR answer, because I think here the flow and the scholarly tone of the answer gets disturbed. So I was always using short paragraphs in PSIR. Now, if I answer the question on West Asia, in the GS2 paper, I'll be using a lot more examples. I'll be giving the present state of US-Iran and how that is impacting India, the Saudi Arabia and the Israel relations or the Iran relations, Israel-Palestine issue, etc. But here, when I'll be writing an answer, I'll probably start with a phrase like, Kautilya has written about Mandal Siddhanta, and in that, the West Asia lies in our extended neighborhood. So I will write that West Asia, according to the Kautilya's Mandal Siddhanta, lies in the second concentric circle of India's neighborhood. That in itself shows your scholarly tone right at the first itself. Then you can probably evolve the answer from how the relations were earlier, that India only considered West Asia as a gas station. Now the relations have developed a huge geostrategic, geoeconomic, and geopolitical significance. And then I will also be giving examples, but I will be quoting a lot of scholars. So I can bring in Kumar Swamy, I can bring in Shyam Saran's point of view, I can bring in C. Raja Mohan's point of view. So these are the difference that I will bring in my answer. Another example that I had prepared for showing the difference was this particular question was asked in GS2 this year. The long sustained image of India as leader of oppressed and marginalized nation has disappeared on account of its newfound role in emerging global order. Elaborate. So now, if you've noticed that from this year onwards, even the IR questions are becoming a lot more analytical in nature. And here you have a very huge plus point because your understanding, your base is very strong given the PSIR optional that you have. But again, to differentiate here, I'll be bringing in the Israel-Palestine issue. I'll be bringing in how India's position on climate change has changed. That earlier India used to be defensive, but now India has one of the most significant Paris climate targets. Now, again, I will show the importance that India is giving to NAM in the recent years. Now, this is what I brought in the GS2 answers. But if I'll probably bring it from the PSIR context, I will try to elaborate heavily on the changing global order at the present time. Now, how I will do that is by giving phrases like the end of transatlantic century, or the shift of center of gravity, or like India's vision of world order of a multipolar world, and Prime Minister's speech at Davos to bring about what India's perspective is. And then I can perhaps bring in examples from the foreign policy circles. So the External Affairs Minister and the Foreign Secretary's speeches. So like phrases like net security provider, issue-based arrangement rather than non-alignment. India as a southwestern power rather than a southern power. So these phrases I'll be also using in the GS2 answer, but they will be much reduced. They will not be that complicated. I will not be bringing in the scholars. I will not be investing so much space in trying to build the background. So this is something I will invest in the PSIR answer. Another thing is that now when you're reading the topic, you will have a lot of common subjects. So Indian nationalism is something common to PSIR and paper one. You have people like Gandhi, Nehru, Bose, MN Roy, even in this optional. But you need to realize you have to read them from a political scholarly point of view. So you can link Nehru with the Fabian socialism school. So you have to bring those kind of interlinkages. You have to understand which school of thought they represent and write the answer from that perspective. So you should try as much as possible to separate the content in the PSIR and the Indian nationalism for the GS1 part. Now, as I had said earlier, I used to pre-plan introductions for my papers. So some examples for that would probably be like, so in paper one part A, we can say justice is an architectonic principle. And I used to use that wherever a question on justice will come. Then, like I gave earlier, that West Asia lies in the second post-centric circle of India's secure strategic matrix. That becomes my introduction pre-planned. Then there are prime minister's speeches that you can use. So for Russia, we can say that Prime Minister Modi has said that everyone in India knows who is India's best friend. So that becomes a very good introduction. Then you can link it with theory. So Japan, according to Kautilya's Arthashastra, is a natural ally of India, especially in the context of China. So these are the things that I used to invest my time in. Now, another question arises: how much of thinkers, scholars, theorists, analysts we should use? I think that gives definitely a very good added advantage to your answers. But I think theorists should be most important. Theories are something you should try and interlink as much as possible. So Quad can be introduced with the democratic peace theory. That will be a very good introduction for it. Then come the scholars. So for example, Granville Austin. And then come the analysts like the C. Raja Mohan or Shyam Saran, for example. Now, another thing just I want to caution is that try not to overdo this. Otherwise, what happens is when you're reading the answer, you're just reading a person and his view, and your original opinion gets lost. So these scholars should be used to substantiate your point of view rather than just throwing names on the person who's checking your copy.
So I'm interrupting you. So out of 20, for example, I don't know how many questions they ask in optional. So 5 and 5, 10 compulsory questions, I think. And then we have on an average 3. So we have 9 there and 9 there, 18 and approximately 25 to 30 questions they have. 25 questions.
19 questions.
So out of these 20 questions, can you quantify in how many questions ideally we should write the codes? Ideally, we should write the 2-3 components which you said. Any rough value?
I think you can do that in as many questions as possible. All I want to say is try not to get deterred during the exam time when you realize ki, oh, I don't remember any scholar for this particular answer, because you can always quote their keywords. So for example, like I said, I probably did not remember C. Raja Mohan's name, but I quoted the keywords that he had used. So you can probably try and remember that, and later on you can remember as many scholars as possible. I tried remembering at max 4 scholars for the conclusion or the solutions, where we bring in the analysts. So that was my approach. uh, Interlinking, again, this is something you can do when you're done with all the topics and when you're revising, but interlinking is very important in this optional. So I'll give you example. If you've heard of the topic called comparative politics, it's in paper 2. But that is very, you can quote a lot of scholars from paper 1 in that particular section, so you should try doing that beforehand itself. Then, if I give you the example of a question based on realism versus liberalism, so you bring in all their perspectives, etc. Then you can also probably say that there are schools between these two which are interlinking, which are accommodating the viewpoints of both the schools. So you can bring in the liberal realism by Hedley Bull, who gives the concept of anarchical society, and another like realist liberalism, which is the complex interdependence by Waltz and Nye. So now here, this is a point I found from one of the toppers answer copies. I could not do that on my own. So you should try exploring the answer copies of toppers as much as possible. Now, there was a question on the changing nature of socio-economic profile of the legislators. There you can bring in criminalization of politics, money and muscle powers in politics, and then you can bring in scholars like Milan Vaishnav, Christopher Jeffrey Lord, etc. So you should not silo your knowledge when you're preparing for the optional. Try interlinking as much as possible.
So when you are saying thinkers, so are you also distinguishing between Indian thinkers and foreign thinkers with respect to paper 1 and paper 2? You used Indian thinkers in paper 1 and foreign thinkers in paper 2.
I use both kind of thinkers. Usually, and the current affairs that we read from Indian Express and the Hindu are the Indian analysts like C. Raja Mohan or Shyam Saran. These are probably usually from the diplomatic circles. So these can be brought in for the current affairs perspective. And the scholars that we read like Mearsheimer, Hobbes, Plato, that can be brought in for the scholarly perspective.
So you use scholarly perspective in paper 2 also?
Yes, sir. Even for paper 2 part B, I was like, for example, for quad, if the question is on quad, I will bring in the democratic peace theory. So those kind of interlinking I was trying to do.
Okay. Have you also followed this magazines and all, World Focus and all?
No, sir, I did not. Now, for the conclusion, like I said earlier, here you can bring in a lot of external affairs minister and foreign secretaries perspectives, because here if you bring in their perspective, it is showing that your thought process is inclined to the present foreign policy circles, and that is also showing your thought process, that you are aligned with the present foreign policy thinking, so to say. And so you here also you can bring in theories. So because this world is in a transition, a concept called fast power, which is given by John Chipman, can be brought in to show how India should proceed with the changing dynamics in the world. So those kind of things you should again try to do beforehand. Now, current affairs events. So I pointed out earlier, there was a question on NAM summit in Venezuela. I did not know much about it, except that Prime Minister Modi did not visit that place. So after giving a brief of whatever I could possibly write on that summit, I also brought in this dimension that Prime Minister Modi opted out of the summit, and this shows what kind of relevance we are giving to non-alignment today. And then you can bring in like the idea that we are now moving towards issue-based alignments rather than non-alignment. So that kind of interlinking, if you have limited knowledge, you can do. Again, if there was a question on to highlight BIMSTEC's role. So after giving whatever significance of BIMSTEC holds and what are the projects, I also brought in the dimension that now it is being considered as an alternative to SAARC. That was probably because I did not have much knowledge, and also to show that I know why this BIMSTEC question is relevant today. So what are the possibility of it becoming an alternative to SAARC? I briefly explained that. Then in IPSA was another question that was asked this year. Here I tried to bring in the dimension of South-South cooperation and its geostrategic perspective, because both China and US are not present on that platform, and hence India can move forwards its agenda very easily. So that kind of interlinking you can do. Again, to show you the examples of keywords that are used in the actual exam. So there was a question on the South China Sea dispute. So here you can bring in the 9 dash line or the salami tactics that China is using in that region. And there's the Sun Tzu strategy that we say that subduing your enemy without fighting. So that is a strategy that China is using there. Those kind of keywords add a lot of value. Then if you, there was a question on US-Iran relations and how that is affecting India. So there you can bring in the maximum pressure approach or brinksmanship that US was following, or how it is a concern for India's strategic autonomy moving forward. So these keywords that you can try and incorporate. Now, if we, like I have already explained a lot about how to interlink theory with current affairs, but what I would suggest is you should try and do this beforehand as much as possible. So let's say if you're reading Quad and you found that democratic peace theory is relevant here. So you go back to democratic peace theory in your notes and write down example of Quad. So you're using it in both the places. So do that as much actively as possible. Then so some examples could be, so if you have heard of the Mackinder's heartland theory, so that can be very aptly applied in Central Asia. So in Central Asia, I will write that down in the introduction itself. Then, and this is something you can easily learn from Topper's test copies. They do that a lot, and I have learned slowly from there.
It's a major part of the geography optional, actually, heartland theory.
Okay, sir. And so, for example, there was a question on Gramsci and the concept of hegemony. There, I brought in the Indian freedom struggle as an example, that Gandhi used the same strategy as Gramsci. Then, like I told you earlier, even paper 1 and paper 2 can be used interchangeably. So that should be something which should be done before itself. Now, if we come to answer writing practice, how should we do it? So initially you can give time. You should not look at the amount of whether you are able to do it in the stipulated time according to the exam. You can give time. You can try and write it in rough, try a brief flow of the answer, and then write it properly, so that way you can see whether you are going in the right direction. But once you're comfortable with the basic level of writing, I would suggest that you start focusing on the timing as well. Because what happens is that earlier we write a lot of words and we often cross the word limit while practicing answers. But if you write a full test in the given time, you will realize that it's very difficult to cross the word limit in the actual exam. And if you do so, you will end up missing out on some of the questions. So that should not happen. And you should try and timing your answers later on in the later stages, especially between prelims and mains. Now, if we look at the mock tests, no, so before that, I would like to give some specific pointers for paper 1. So if a lot of people ask that paper 1 part A, almost all the thinkers, you read the same content that everyone reads. So how do you make your answer unique? I think here your understanding and the flow of answer becomes very important. So you should invest time in understanding each and every concept and how it can be interlinked. You should also use the quotes, the proper statements that the particular thinker might have given, and use that very richly in the exam. Then you can use the scholars' names and the book they have written. Then you can try interlinking with other scholars. You can give current examples like I gave of Gramsci. And then you can also give in a critique. So like I've given in the PPT, the last slide, where I've given a rough flow of the structure of the answer, that similar structure can be used by you. If those particular points are covered, I think your answer is pretty much comprehensive. And in the paper 1 part B, apart from the points mentioned earlier, article numbers, commission recommendations, and judgments become very important. So that should be something which should be practiced. Now, coming to mock tests, I think mock tests are very important. You can join Shubhra Ranjan ma'am's mock tests or GS Score or any other classes that are available. Or if you're not able to do that, you can just go and take the question papers and write the answers on your own. Now, one thing I would want to warn all of you is that the answer checking quality is not that good. So you should not expect too much out of it. Rather, you should focus on the class test discussions of that particular topic. And also, like in every test, they will give you the topper who has scored the highest marks in that particular test. So you should compare your answers with that person's answers. But again, a lot of people do cross the word limit. So take care that even if you have written less but in limited words, that is a better answer than writing a lot in a lot of words. Now, during the exam, just a few pointers would be that please select the questions properly. Give it the 5 minutes time that you might require, but select the questions beforehand for the for the questions which are not compulsory, because these are 15-20 marker questions, and if you don't have an in-depth knowledge of that, then you will probably not be able to write it in a very good flow. And so I always try to work on my choose questions according to my strength areas. So in my paper 1 part A, I knew that Marxist scholars, Gramsci, Karl Marx, etc., these are scholars that I'm more comfortable in. So I used to select those kind of questions. And in paper 1 part B, I knew that my freedom struggle section was a little weak. So I tried to avoid questions of that part. So you should do that consciously. You should select the questions and then start writing answers. And you should try and give more focus to the 20 and 15 marker questions. You can either start with the 20 marker, or you can even start with the compulsory questions, but try giving more focus to the 20 and 15 markers, because there you have to build a structure. You have to write almost 4 pages of answer. So there you should invest more time. So I think that is all from my side.
I think I should also start taking classes of PSIR. Anyways, so I'll ask few more questions and all. So according to you, suppose an aspirant wants to write a 2020 one as the first attempt, when he or she should start writing the test series?
When he should start writing.
Yeah.
So first I would suggest right now, choose your optional, finish the content, and you can probably till the month of February, you can write answers starting right now, or even a month or two. Like you can start in December and write answers till probably February or March.
Okay. Okay. Then we have, yeah, there was a one essay in 2018, I think. So the significance of NAM 2.0.
Yes,
there was one essay, I think 2018. So how, I think that we can cover in essay wala session rather than in this session, or you want to cover in this particular session that what is the significance of PSIR in essay also?
I think again, the significance of PSIR is very high because you know a lot of content, but you should always focus that an essay does not need that scholarly opinion. It does not need so many scholars. You can probably write names. You can write names of Amartya Sen. You can write names of Shyam Saran also, but names which are known to the people, names which would be known to a common person reading the news, the answer. It should not look like you're throwing your PSIR knowledge in an essay answer. And there you can incorporate, there I think the focus should be more on flow, in terms of capturing the interest of the reader. That is not the case in the optional.
Okay. Then other than the notes which you followed for PSIR coaching notes, any specific book you want to suggest? One book I remember that you read after your mains.
Yes,
other than that,
I don't think there are specific books except for like the BL Fadia or OP Goba that you can refer to. If you have more time, if you have, like, suppose you are in college and you're planning to give after prelims, after college, then you can invest time. So sir had referred a book called The China's Economy. That was a very good book.
You return that book to me, or it's
I
still
returned that book to you.
Okay. It's
so,
okay.
That gives you a very good insight into how the Chinese economy functions, and it will be relevant from the optional perspective also.
I heard that you are just saying that you will take a 30-minute session on that book. I just heard it somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, we will consider. So then you can also consider Rajiv Sikri or David Maloon's book, or you can even read books like recently a book has been released by Shashi Tharoor, The Global World Disorder. So if you have time, you can read those kind of books.
Okay. You also included diagrams or micro diagrams, etc., in your optional paper?
No, sir, I did not include micro diagrams.
No
Those were
diagram.
things that I absolutely used in GS2. I used that a lot in GS2. I used to make micro diagrams. I used to try and make flow charts if possible. Try and make image like maps if possible, but not in the PSIR optional.
Okay, okay, okay. Any test series which you want to suggest कि इसका test series अच्छा है या कुछ अच्छा नहीं है?
Test
How do
series.
you evaluate your answers then?
So like I said, you need to have reference points. So firstly, you have like the test discussions where the teacher will give you the answers, like the model answers. Then you have the toppers answers if that particular test. So those are the points that I use.
Okay. I can see some questions from the chat section. We'll start the first one. They're saying that because you completed your optional in just 3 months, how you manage GS and optional both in just 3 months?
So GS was something, because I was preparing for prelims, I had a good base in GS already, but prelims was PSI was something I started from scratch. So I had to invest a lot more time in that. I probably did not have time to make a lot of notes. So I was just highlighting it in the notes itself, which I had taken, and I was revising that. So that probably saved a lot of time. But again, you have to like give equal time to PSIR, like the optional and GS. So that is why I'm suggesting to try and finish the optional as much as possible at the early stages itself.
So you covered both GS and optional in the same day. It means half a 4 hours optional, 4-5 hours GS, etc., or week by week.
No, sir. I used to give like half the day for optional and half the day for GS.
Okay, okay. Then there are some questions which you can never be really prepared. For example, in each and every phases of this exam you have in prelims also, in mains also, and interview also. So what is your suggestion how to attempt such questions in mains?
So there will definitely be questions. Like I said, the NAM visit, I had no idea about it. Here your peripheral knowledge firstly comes in a lot of help. Like I just knew that Prime Minister Modi did not visit that, and hence I could gauge that the relevance of NAM was going down, and I could write something on that based on that peripheral knowledge which was significant to that answer. Secondly, you should go back to your basic concepts, like in paper 1, democracy, justice, equality, rights, those kind of concepts. In paper 2, you should go back to the concepts like balance of power, security dilemma, strategic flux, geostrategic significance. Those kind of keywords you can try and put in. And then again, try to bring in a little bit of current affairs if possible. It may not be possible for you to bring in scholars or analysts here because you've not done that before, but don't get disheartened by that in the exam.
Okay. Few more questions. That how many answers did you practice before the final exam or optional?
So I had very little time to practice answers, but I was constantly in touch with what the way the toppers were writing the answer. I was constantly seeing the toppers answer copies. I might have written just 10 or 15 answers, not more than that. But what I did, another thing that I mentally did, because I did not have time to write it all down, was I was thinking the answer in my mind. And for anyone who has less time, they can also do that. That you can probably think the introduction, the conclusion, these would be the particular points that I would cover in the different paragraphs. And that is an exercise that I rigorously did with the different questions.
Okay. Okay. So as an optional, also a few more questions are there. As an optional, I can see there is a static portion of the optional and the current affairs portion of the optional. How much time you gave to the static one, and what percentage of time you gave to the static one, and what percentage you gave to the current affairs of PSIR?
This is not something I artificially segregated in. So if I tell you my schedule, I used to give like the morning 2 hours for reading the newspaper and the ORF articles, if any. I was reading the other current affairs articles on the go on my Facebook feed. In the afternoon, I would sit for the optional, and in the evening, I would sit for the GS paper. So once, like in paper 1 part A, I had made a good amount of notes. In paper 2 also, a significant amount of notes. I was trying to note down the keywords, and later on I was just trying to revise the keywords as much as possible. So that was what I did.
Okay, then few more questions I can see. There is one question, I don't know how much significant it is. Which section you attempted more questions from section A and B in paper 1 and 2?
Again, this depends on your level of comfort. But I remember in paper 1, I did more questions from paper 1 part A. And in paper 2, I did more questions from paper 2 part B.
Okay. There's one question that what was the name of that book on the Chinese economy?
It was China's Economy. The name of the book was China's Economy. I'll have to check the author.
I think so. Only these questions I can see broadly. Yeah, we can take more questions. Just be in the last 30 seconds or so. If you have more questions, you can just write down. Email ID of ma'am. Once she will be posted, her email ID, official email ID will be available on the government website. You'll get an official email ID. simi@IAS something and all. We have to find because she said that she wrote 10 to 20 questions only with respect to the PSIR. So I don't think so that the PSIR, your answer copies are available, right?
The answer copies are not available, but I'll compile a set of answers that I've written before and after mains, and I will share them.
Okay. Also, if 2-3 questions you can write of 2019. So if any 2 or 3 questions you can write with respect to 2019, that we will share. Okay. Question is it safe to quote some less famous scholars, but whose views are relevant? Yeah, of course you can write. To make her to remember scholars. I think so. Only these questions. ठीक है, इसको फिर finish करते हैं बेटा. And then the next session is of general studies answer writing, right? It's scheduled on 27th.
26th.
26th. Okay, Simi. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.